It was a cold morning, early April. The kind of day where the sun tries to break through but just gives up halfway. The church smelled like flowers. Too many of them. Lilies, mostly. I never liked lilies. Carol loved them. She was lying there, still and quiet, in that overpriced casket her sister picked out. People came in slowly. Some crying, some just trying to look like they cared. My daughter held my hand. My son stood behind me, not saying much. He never does. But me, I wasn't crying. I couldn't. Not after what I'd found 3 nights ago. See, I'd gone down to the basement looking for our old wedding album. I thought maybe I'd put together something for the service. Photos, little memories, you know? I ended up digging through her old boxes. I found this tin lunchbox tucked behind a stack of winter coats. It had stickers on it, old ones, from the 80s. Stuff our kids would have used. Inside, there were 3 flash drives in Ziploc bags. Each one had a year written on it in her handwriting. I plugged the first one into my old laptop out in the garage. And that's when everything changed. The screen lit up. She was sitting on our bed. Same comforter, same nightstand lamp, everything. She was wearing her bathrobe. Her hair was up like she used to do back in the day. She looked straight into the camera and smiled. "Hi baby," she said. "I miss you already." I leaned back. My heart was pounding. I didn't know who she was talking to yet, but I knew it wasn't me. Then a voice came through. Not from the screen. From off camera. It was quiet but clear. "I miss you too. I couldn't stop thinking about you all day." I froze. That voice, I'd heard it 1,000 times before. It was Diane. Her best friend. Her so-called soul sister. The woman who spent every Thanksgiving with us. The one who brought casseroles when our daughter was in the hospital. The woman who stood by her side when I had my back surgery. That Diane. They were lovers. For how long? I didn't know yet. But when I watched the next video, and the one after that, I got my answer. They had been together for over 20 years. Secret hotel trips. Nights with the girls. Afternoon wine sessions. It was all a cover. And I was just the guy mowing the lawn and paying the bills. She said things like, "I feel alive when I'm with you, and he's a good man, but he's not you." In one video she even laughed and said, "He still brings me flowers like that's gonna change anything." I should have felt rage. I should have screamed, thrown the laptop against the wall. But I didn't. I just sat there. Staring. Breathing. Everything I knew was a lie. So now, standing at her funeral, watching Diane sit in the front row like she just lost her soulmate, yeah, I was angry. But I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to make a scene. Not yet. The pastor asked if anyone wanted to say a few words. Nobody moved. I walked up to the front, buttoned my coat, and looked out at everyone. My kids. My grandkids. Friends. Neighbors. Diane. I cleared my throat. Carol and I were married for 43 years. We raised 2 children. We built a home. We shared holidays, arguments, laughter, and silence. And I loved her more than I ever said out loud. People nodded. Diane wiped her eyes. But Carol wasn't just my wife. I looked over at Diane. She was something else to someone else. For over 2 decades. There was a ripple in the crowd. People shifted. Whispers started. I reached into my pocket and held up the flash drive. "This here," I said, "is her truth. Not the one you knew. Not the one she told you. The real one. The pastor looked uneasy. Maybe this isn't the time? No, I said. This is exactly the time. I walked over to the sound booth, plugged it in. The screen behind the altar flickered. Carol's face appeared. Same robe. Same smile. Hi, baby. I miss you already. The room went quiet. Diane's face turned white. She stood up, like she might run. But she didn't. She couldn't. Everyone turned to look at her. And me? I just sat down in the front pew. Finally breathing right. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't the fool anymore. I was in control. No one said a word for a full minute after that video played. Carol's voice still echoed in my ears, but not like a memory. It was fresh. It was real. Like she was sitting right there, whispering her lies into Diane's ear all over again. People in the pews shifted uncomfortably. Some looked confused, others straight up shocked. My daughter stared at the screen, her mouth open just slightly, like she was trying to find a place to file what she just heard. My son didn't move at all. He just looked at me, and I couldn't tell if there was anger in his eyes, or gratitude. Diane stood frozen. She didn't sit back down. She didn't run either. Just stood there, halfway between the casket and the exit, as if deciding whether to mourn or escape. I didn't care what she chose. The pastor finally stepped forward, muttering something about respect for the dead and not the time or place. But no one really listened. That room belonged to me now. And to Carol's voice, still humming in the silence. I left the church a few minutes later. Didn't wait for anyone. Didn't say goodbye. My kids followed me out into the parking lot, but I kept walking until I reached the truck. I sat there, hands on the wheel, engine off, just breathing. They'd all think I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. Maybe that's what betrayal that deep does to a man. But I wasn't sorry. Not even close. That night, back at home, I sat at the kitchen table with all 3 flash drives lined up like bullets on a table. I didn't want to watch the rest of them. I didn't want to see her smile like that again or hear her whisper secrets meant for someone else. But I had to. I needed to know how far it went. How long I'd been living in her shadow. The second drive was labeled 2012. I clicked open the first file. The video began in a hotel room. Generic, beige curtains. A lamp with a broken shade. Carol sat at the edge of the bed, her legs crossed, a glass of red wine in her hand. She looked younger than in the last video. Softer. Maybe even happier. It's our anniversary, she said, holding up the glass. 25 years of marriage. And here I am with you instead. She laughed. I told him I was going to a retreat. You know, one of those women's weekends. He packed my suitcase for me. She sipped her wine and shook her head. I think he suspects sometimes. But he never asks. He doesn't want to know. He needs to believe I'm still the woman he married. I paused the video. She was right. I hadn't wanted to see it. All those nights she came home late. All those times I caught her smiling at her phone. All those lies about girls' nights and book clubs. I bought every word because I couldn't imagine her being someone else. That was my biggest mistake. I clicked play again. Diane's voice came through, this time closer to the camera. You deserve to be happy. With me. I am, Carol said. I've never felt this free. I closed the laptop. I couldn't take any more that night. The next morning, I got up before sunrise. I made coffee the way I always had, strong, black, no sugar. I sat on the porch, wrapped in the same old flannel jacket I'd worn every fall since 1983. The birds were already singing. The sky was soft gray. I looked across the lawn at the garden Carol used to tend. It was overgrown now. Weeds fighting for space. Wild, tangled, messy. Just like everything else she left behind. Diane hadn't called. Neither had anyone else. I knew they were talking, though. Whispering behind their doors. Trying to decide whether I was grieving or unraveling. Wondering if I'd ruined the funeral or told a truth that needed to be heard. I didn't care what they thought. Later that day, I went to the church. The pastor was there, packing up the extra chairs. He didn't look at me at first. I walked up to him. "You think I went too far?" I asked. He sighed. "I think you're hurting." That wasn't the question. He finally looked at me. "No. I don't think you went too far. But I think you've got more truth in those drives than you know what to do with." I nodded. He patted my shoulder. "You ever want to talk, you know where to find me." I thanked him and walked out. That night, I opened the third drive. The first video started with Carol crying. Not tears of joy. Real crying. Shaking. "He said he loved me," she whispered. "But he's been seeing someone else. A man." Diane's voice replied, "Are you serious?" Carol nodded. "Guess I'm not the only one living a double life." I stared at the screen. So even Diane had been betrayed. Maybe that's what happens when your whole life is built on secrets. But I wasn't about to feel sorry for either of them. I'd lived in a lie long enough. Now it was their turn to face the truth. 2 days after the funeral, I walked into the grocery store like I always did. Same aisle, same creaky shopping cart, same manager nodding from behind the register. But something was different. People looked at me too long. Not in a friendly way. Not in a neighborly "hey, sorry for your lost" way. More like they were trying to see something behind my eyes. A crack. A breakdown. A sign that I'd lost it. I grabbed a loaf of rye bread and a jug of milk and made my way toward the coffee section. That's when I saw her. Diane. She stood there like nothing had happened. Hair curled, scarf tied around her neck, bottle of white wine in her hand. She didn't look shocked. She didn't look sorry. She just looked tired. Our eyes met. Neither of us blinked. "You got a second?" she asked quietly, not looking directly at me. I didn't answer. I just stood there. She sighed and nodded toward the back of the store. The place where the discount flowers were. We walked there without saying a word. She turned, folded her arms, and stared at the floor. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "You didn't have to humiliate me. You didn't have to screw my wife for 20 years, I answered, calm as a lake in winter. Her lips tightened. "It wasn't about you." I laughed. A bitter, dry laugh. "That's the thing, Diane. It was always about me. You just didn't care." She stepped closer. "We loved each other. Carol and I, we were something you'd never understand." I looked at her, really looked at her. "You sat at my table. You blessed my food. You gave presents to my kids." Tears welled in her eyes. "We didn't want to hurt you." I shook my head. "You know what the worst part is?" I asked. "It's not the lies. Not even the sex. It's that you both made me feel crazy. Like I was paranoid. Like I was boring. You two whispered behind my back and called it love." She sniffled and turned away. "I'm not here to beg," she said. "I just I just wanted you to know Carol really did love you. In her own way. That sentence nearly made me swing the milk jug into the shelf beside us. But I didn't. I just walked away. Back home, I sat at the dining table, the unopened groceries still in the bag. I opened a small notebook I'd started keeping. A list of names. Places. Dates. Details I pulled from the videos. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I went to the garage, unlocked my workbench drawer, and pulled out an old metal lockbox. Inside was something I hadn't touched in years, a set of legal documents, receipts, a few private photos. Back in the early 2000s, I had suspicions about Carol and a man named Alan. We worked together back then, and I always caught him staring too long. But I never had proof. Just gut feelings. Now, with the video timeline I had, I could go back and cross-reference travel dates, hotel bookings, even old phone bills. And sure enough, there it was. Carol had gone to Chicago in October 2003. Claimed it was for a writer's retreat. But Alan had also been on vacation that same week. I remembered because I had to cover his shift. I kept digging. Printed out statements from our old joint account. Checked every dollar. Every airline ticket. Every strange ATM withdrawal. Piece by piece, I rebuilt her life. Not the one I thought she lived. The real one. The hidden one. I stayed up all night. Around 3 a.m., I found something that stopped me cold. A life insurance policy. It was in my name. But the secondary beneficiary wasn't our daughter, like we'd agreed. It was Diane. My breath caught in my throat. It had been changed in 2016. Signed by Carol. I checked the notarization. It was legit. I never knew. She never told me. I had no idea how long Diane had known about it. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling. What kind of person rewrites a life that way? Was I a fool? Or just her cover? A man who kept the lights on and the taxes paid while she lived two lives, one public, one hidden. I didn't know anymore. But what I did know was this: I wasn't going to be silent. Not now. Not after everything. The next morning, I called an attorney. Not just any lawyer. A man who specialized in posthumous fraud, estate revisions, and quiet investigations. We met in his office 2 days later. I brought the flash drives. I brought the notebook. I brought copies of everything. He listened carefully. Asked the right questions. Took notes. At the end, he leaned back in his chair and said, "This isn't just betrayal. This is a pattern. You've got enough here to shake her whole legacy." I nodded. "Good," I said. "Because I'm not done." 3 days after I spoke with the attorney, I found myself sitting in the back row of a local community center. They were holding a charity dinner in Carol's honor. Organized by her book club. Women she used to bake pies with. Women who thought they knew her. Diane was there too. Of course she was. She stood at the front, giving some speech about Carol's kindness and light. She wore a pearl necklace, Carol's necklace. Said she'd been like a sister. People clapped. Some wiped away tears. I sat with my hands folded, calm on the outside, while my stomach twisted like a coiled rope on fire. None of these people had seen the flash drives. They didn't hear the things I heard at 3 in the morning. The laughter. The secrets. The lies. To them, Carol was still a saint. And Diane, well, she was just the grieving best friend. When the speech was over, people shuffled toward the buffet line, making small talk, sharing memories. I stayed seated. Then I saw her, One of Carol's old friends, Marlene. She was sweet. Wore too much perfume, always brought banana bread to the 4th of July cookouts. She smiled and came over to me. "You holding up okay, Richard?" she asked, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. I nodded. "One day at a time." "I still can't believe she's gone," Marlene whispered. "She was just so full of love." "Yeah," I said. "She was full of something." Marlene tilted her head, confused, but I didn't elaborate. She moved on. A few minutes later, Diane walked past me, plate in hand, pretending she didn't see me. But I called out, just loud enough. "Diane." She stopped. Turned. People were close enough to hear. "Can I have a word?" I asked, casual as ever. She didn't have a choice. She walked over, tense, jaw tight. "What?" she hissed under her breath. "I just wanted to let you know that I've filed for an investigation into the insurance policy," I said. "You might get a call soon." Her face froze. She blinked. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the one where you're listed as the secondary beneficiary. You know, the one signed in 2016. Without my knowledge." She looked around. People were definitely listening now. She leaned in closer. "You want to do this here?" "I didn't want to do any of this," I said. "But here we are." She backed away, face flushed, and disappeared toward the restroom. I waited a few minutes, then quietly slipped out the back door. I'd done enough for one evening. Back home, I opened my laptop and started going through my list again. Every man I had a suspicion about. Alan, of course. Already covered him. But another name had started to bother me. Glenn. My old neighbor from 20 years ago. He used to come over all the time to borrow tools. Always made Carol laugh. I never thought much of it. But now, I remembered something. One night, late, maybe 98 or 99, I came home early from a work trip. Glenn was in the kitchen. Said he was helping Carol fix the sink. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I had no proof, but something inside me wouldn't let it go. So I called a contact at the county office. Asked for any records involving Glenn over the past 25 years. I said it was for a personal estate dispute. Took a little talking, but I got what I needed. Glenn had declared bankruptcy in 2001. Guess who signed a private loan to help him out? Carol. It wasn't much. Just a few thousand. But it was her signature. And it was behind my back. I found his address. Still in town. Living in a duplex on the east side. Next morning, I drove there. He opened the door in a stained white t-shirt, hair thinning, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in days. "Rich," he said. "Wow. It's been a long time." I nodded. "Can I come in?" He hesitated, then stepped aside. The place smelled like reheated pizza and old carpet. I didn't sit down. "Just came to ask you a simple question," I said. He looked nervous already. "Did you sleep with my wife?" He stared at the floor. Said nothing. "That wasn't rhetorical," I added. He finally looked up. "It was a long time ago." "How long?" I asked. He exhaled. "Maybe twice. 1998, I think. Maybe 99. I closed my eyes. It hit harder than I expected. "Why?" "She was lonely. You were gone all the time. She said you didn't talk anymore." I opened my eyes. "And that made it okay?" "No," he said. "It didn't. I didn't hit him. I didn't yell. I just turned and walked out. By the time I got back in my truck, my hands were shaking. Not from rage. From exhaustion. Every time I thought I'd reached the bottom, there was another level. Another crack in the story I thought was my life. But I was too far in to stop now. And the next name on my list? It wasn't a man. It was our daughter. I didn't sleep that night. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, my thoughts running in circles like a dog chasing its own tail. The room was too quiet without Carol's soft breathing, though now, even if she were here, I wasn't sure I'd want to hear it. What Glenn said kept replaying in my head. She was lonely. You were gone. That excuse. That hollow defense people use when they know they've crossed a line they can't come back from. He sounded sorry, sure, but not sorry enough. And then there was Diane. Still wearing Carol's necklace, still trying to walk through this town like her hands weren't covered in years of deception. And now, sitting here in the silence, one thing stuck out louder than the rest. The insurance policy. Why Diane? Carol didn't trust many people. She never gave up control easily. And yet, she gave Diane access to something I didn't even know existed. Not just emotionally, but legally. That wasn't a mistake. That was deliberate. And if she was hiding that, what else was she hiding? I got up, walked to the den, and opened the drawer where we kept old tax records. I dug through file after file until I found the family trust papers. Carol always handled the paperwork. She said I had too much on my plate. I never thought twice about it. She paid the bills. Filed the taxes. Renewed the registrations. I just fixed the leaky sinks and shoveled the driveway. Flipping through the documents, I came across a notarized addendum. It wasn't in my handwriting. But my name was on it. It granted temporary power of attorney, once, in 2017, for financial decisions during a time when I'd had pneumonia. At the time, I'd been in the hospital for 4 days. She said it was just a precaution. And guess who she listed as her secondary contact? A daughter, Lily. I sat back. Now, don't get me wrong. I love Lily. Always have. She's smart, independent, got a good head on her shoulders. But that name showing up in this context, in a document I never approved, rubbed me wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling. I picked up the phone and called her. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, Dad," she said. Her voice was calm, cheerful, like nothing had changed. "Everything okay?" "I need to ask you something," I said. "And I want you to tell me the truth." Silence on the other end. "Did Mom ever talk to you about changes to our accounts or legal stuff? Anything out of the ordinary?" She hesitated. "I mean, she mentioned things sometimes. She said she was just making sure things were in order." "In what way?" "Like, if something happened to you, she wanted to make sure we'd be covered." I figured it was normal. I didn't say anything. "Dad," she asked. "Why are you asking this?" "Because your mother forged my signature on a financial authorization. And she put your name on it." Now the silence on her end was different. Heavier. "I didn't know that," she said, finally. "Did she ever give you anything to sign? Ask you to be a witness for something?" There was another long pause. Then she said something that turned my stomach. "She gave me a sealed envelope once. A while ago. Said if anything ever happened to her, I was supposed to give it to Diane." My hand clenched around the phone. "Did you?" "No. I put it in my closet and forgot about it." "Go get it." She came back a few minutes later, slightly out of breath. "It's here," she said. "Still sealed." "Bring it to me," I said. "Today." Right now. 2 hours later, she pulled into my driveway. No grandkids. No husband. Just her and that envelope. She looked worried, rightfully so. We sat in the kitchen. I took the envelope from her hands, turned it over. No return address. Just one word written across the back in Carol's neat cursive. For Diane. I stared at it. Thought about burning it. Then I opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten. The opening line nearly knocked the wind out of me. If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're the only one I ever truly trusted. It was pages long. A goodbye. A confession. A plan. Carol had written that if anything ever happened to her unexpectedly, she wanted Diane to contact a woman named Margaret, someone I'd never heard of. The letter said Margaret had everything stored, and could finish the process of transferring certain assets. No mention of me. No instruction to tell the children. Just Diane. Just secrets. I looked up at Lily. Did you know about any of this? I asked. She shook her head. She was pale. No. I swear. I believe you, I said quietly. But I need you to understand something. I'm not done. And this isn't just about your mother anymore. She nodded slowly. What are you going to do? I folded the letter. I'm going to find out who Margaret is. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold, staring at the name written in Carol's letter, Margaret. Just one name. No address, no phone number, no clue who she was beyond the one with everything stored. I'd never heard Carol mention a Margaret. Not once. And in a marriage that lasted 43 years, you think you've heard every friend's name 100 times. I opened my laptop and started digging. First, I searched through Carol's email. I still had access to her old inbox, even though it had been inactive since her death. I typed in Margaret. Dozens of results popped up. Most were junk, forwarded recipes, coupons, newsletters. But one stood out. It was from a Gmail account, mmargaret.a.stevens1980. The subject line read, a private Dropbox access. The body of the email was brief. Just a link and a password. It was sent 2 months before Carol died. I clicked the link. It opened a folder with 4 subfolders, each labeled by year, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. I clicked into the most recent one. What I found made my blood run cold. Scanned documents. PDFs of signed contracts. Financial transfers. Even property deeds. There were records of wire transfers from our joint account, accounts I thought were used only for bills and groceries, into an investment portfolio I didn't even know existed. The portfolio was in Diane's name. I scrolled further. More files. A trust fund. Set up under an alias. The beneficiary? Not me. Not our kids. Diane. I pushed the laptop back and stood up. My heart was thudding hard. Not out of anger, out of clarity. This wasn't an affair. This wasn't just love letters and stolen weekends. This was an operation. Carol had been planning this for years. Carefully, deliberately. She never planned to die when she did. But she had planned for the moment I'd be out of the way. And Diane was supposed to walk away with everything. I called the attorney. I need to see you today, I said. We met that afternoon in his office, the blinds drawn. I laid it all out, Carol's letter, Lily's envelope, the Dropbox files, the investments, everything. He read through it slowly, nodding, making notes. Your wife was moving assets for over 5 years, he said. Quietly, but methodically. If you hadn't found this, none of it would have come to light. Can we stop it? I asked. Yes. But it'll take some strategy. We'll need to file for fraud, contest the documents, bring Diane in for questioning. It won't be fast, and it won't be quiet. I don't care about quiet, I said. He looked at me for a moment, then leaned back in his chair. There's another option, he said. We hit them socially first. You've got documents, emails, recordings. If you make this public, not just legal, you control the narrative. I didn't answer right away. Let me show you something else, I said, pulling a small USB from my pocket. It was the clip from Carol's video diary, the one where she laughed about me bringing her flowers while she packed for a weekend with Diane. The attorney watched it without blinking. When it ended, he looked at me and said, "You want to bury them?" Both of them. I didn't deny it. Yes. He nodded. Then we'll do it right. One piece at a time. That night, I sat in my den, the files open on the screen. I opened a blank document and began to write. Not a letter. Not a confession. A timeline. Every lie. Every transfer. Every moment I had proof for. I laid it out chronologically, names, dates, places. I added quotes from Carol's videos. I included screenshots from the Dropbox. I worked until sunrise. The next day, I called Marlene. She was surprised to hear from me, but agreed to meet for coffee. We sat in a quiet corner of the diner, the same place Carol used to order grilled cheese with extra pickles. I handed her a printout of the timeline. She read through the first few pages. Her face changed. The warm, confused smile turned cold. Her hand trembled. She told me you were distant, Marlene said. Said she was afraid of you. That's how she justified it. I looked her in the eye. I loved her. That woman you knew, that wasn't the real Carol. She made me into the villain to cover what she was doing. Marlene nodded slowly. She folded the papers and slipped them into her purse. People should know, she said. They will, I replied. By the end of the week, I'd spoken to 5 more people, mutual friends, people who thought Carol was a saint and Diane just a grieving companion. I gave them all the same thing. The truth. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just handed them the evidence and let them draw their own conclusions. And as word started to spread, I could feel the ground shifting. Diane didn't show up to Sunday service. Carol's book club quietly cancelled their next meeting. Even my son, who'd been distant since the funeral, called and asked if we could meet for lunch. It was starting. The real reckoning. And I was just getting warmed up. It took less than a week for the first crack to show. Diane lost her job at the real estate agency. I didn't even know she still worked there, but apparently, she handled closings and contract filings, trusted with client documents. Not anymore. Word got around. It started with Marlene, then passed through Linda, then hit Sharon, who's married to the agency's managing partner. And Sharon? She got the full timeline. With the Dropbox links. I didn't have to say a word. Just handed people the truth and let their silence do the rest. By Friday, Diane was officially on leave. By Monday, she was out. That was step 1. Step 2 came when I paid a visit to the church. Pastor Green and I had never been close. I'm not a religious man by nature, but Carol was. And Diane? She practically lived at the place, volunteered, ran bake sales, organized holiday services. Everyone saw her as a pillar of the community. A godly woman. Loyal. Pure. So I brought a copy of the insurance paperwork. The trust fund statements. The emails. And, of course, the video. Not the whole thing, just enough. Pastor Green watched it, then removed his glasses and sat back, like someone had just kicked him in the ribs. She told me they were just friends, he said quietly. Everyone believed that, I said. Even me. He didn't say much else. But 2 days later, Diane was removed from the event committee. Her name disappeared from the bulletin. The women who used to cling to her stories at Bible study now avoided her in the parking lot. And me? I wasn't done. That week, I sat down with my son, Thomas. We hadn't spoken much since the funeral. I think he'd been trying to process things in his own way, quiet, internal. Like his mother. We met at a diner off Route 17. Just 2 cups of coffee between us. I didn't bring the folder this time. No papers. No USBs. Just my voice. I need to tell you something, I said. He nodded slowly. I know most of it already. People have been talking. That's not the same as hearing it from me. He stared out the window for a moment, then looked back at me. I knew something was off, he said. Even when I was a kid. Mom would disappear sometimes. Dad, you were always so steady. And she had these moods. Like she was 2 different people. That hit hard. You think I should have seen it? I asked. He shook his head. She fooled everyone. Including herself. We didn't talk much after that. But when we stood up to leave, he hugged me. Really hugged me. No words, no excuses. Just a man telling his father, I'm here. It meant more than I expected. I went home that night and opened a fresh notebook. I flipped past the dates, the names, the records. I opened to a blank page and wrote one line. Justice is never loud. It walks in quietly and takes what's owed. The next morning, I took my truck across town to a print shop. I made copies of everything, neatly formatted, page-numbered, hole-punched. I put them in simple black folders. No labels. No titles. Just the truth, packaged and ready. I mailed 5 of them. 1 to Diane's ex-husband. 1 to her son in Arizona. 1 to the local Rotary Club president. 1 to the board of the town's charity foundation. And 1 to a local reporter who'd always had a soft spot for small-town stories with real human weight. I didn't sign anything. Didn't include a note. They'd know soon enough. The fallout started fast. By the weekend, Diane's front yard was empty. No porch decorations, no hanging plants, no flag. Just a for sale sign in the grass. People drove by slowly, staring. She was seen loading boxes into a moving van 2 days later. No help. No friends. Just her and 2 young guys from a moving company who looked like they were trying not to ask questions. She didn't say goodbye to anyone. Didn't stop by the church. Didn't call. And still, I wasn't done. I went back to the attorney. There's one more thing, I said. He raised an eyebrow. Thought we'd cleared the board. Not quite. I pulled out a file I'd kept hidden even from myself. Back when Carol and I were first married, I co-signed on a cabin in Vermont. A place we used once or twice a year, mostly during fall. But the deed had been transferred in 2019. I found the paper 2 nights ago. Carol had sold it to a shell company. And Margaret? She was listed as the managing partner. Let's find out who Margaret really is, I said. The attorney smiled. Let's finish this. Margaret Stevens. That name had been echoing in my head for days. No face. No voice. just a signature on documents that had slowly dismantled everything I thought I knew about my life. The attorney ran a background check. Turns out, Margaret wasn't some faceless ghost hiding behind Carol's letters. She was real. Lived 2 towns over. 65. No kids. Never married. Former accountant. And, as luck would have it, she ran a small consulting business out of her home. Which made sense, considering she was managing assets that weren't supposed to exist. We found property transfers, false company names, even a tax shelter under a religious nonprofit. All clean on paper, all dirty underneath. My wife, Carol, had been quietly moving pieces for years. And Margaret was the one helping her play the game. The question now was, why? Was she just a facilitator, or something more? I told the attorney I'd take care of this part myself. He didn't argue. That afternoon, I got in the truck and drove out toward Margaret's address. It was one of those older ranch-style homes with an overgrown lawn and a white mailbox leaning to one side. The kind of place people drive by without noticing. I parked across the street and waited. 15 minutes later, she came out to get the mail. Gray hair pulled back in a bun. Oversized sunglasses. Moved like someone who didn't like to be looked at. I stepped out of the truck and crossed the road. Margaret? She turned, startled, clutching her keys. Yes? I was married to Carol. I paused. Carol Dawson. Her face didn't change. Not at first. But I saw it, the flicker in her eyes. Recognition. She didn't say anything. Just motioned to the porch. Come in, she said. We sat in a sunroom with faded cushions and a half-dead plant in the corner. A ceiling fan hummed above us. She didn't offer me anything to drink. I figured someone would come eventually, she said. Then you know why I'm here. She nodded. I'm not the villain, Mr. Dawson. I was just helping a friend. She wasn't your friend, I said. She used you. No, Margaret said quietly. She trusted me. There's a difference. I pulled out a copy of one of the asset transfers and laid it on the table between us. This isn't friendship. This is fraud. Margaret looked at the paper. Didn't touch it. She came to me in 2017. Said she needed options. Said she wasn't sure how much longer she could keep up the show. What show? The marriage. The family. All of it. I felt something in my chest crack. Not rage. Something deeper. A quiet sort of betrayal, like a slow leak from a wound I didn't even know I had. She said she didn't want to leave you. Not out of love, but because she owed you. Said you were a good man. Too good. And that made her feel trapped. I stared at her. She lived in my house. Ate my food. Slept in my bed. Margaret nodded. And she cried about that every time we met. I leaned forward. So you helped her hide money? Transfer property? Rewrite her life behind my back? She asked for a way out, Margaret said. I gave her the tools. And Diane? Margaret hesitated. That was messy. I told her not to mix love with business. But she didn't listen. I took out my notebook. Flipped to a page near the back. Carol set up a trust fund. You managed it. The primary beneficiary was Diane. You processed every document. Every dollar. Every lie. Margaret folded her hands. I did what she paid me to do. I stood up. You going to testify, I said. If this goes to court, and it will, you going to tell them everything. She didn't argue. I figured as much, she said. I turned to leave. Then she said something that stopped me cold. There's one more thing. I paused, half out the door. She left something. For you. I turned around. Margaret reached into a drawer and pulled out a small envelope. Sealed. My name written across it in Carol's handwriting. I was instructed to give this to you, only if you came looking. I took it. My hands felt heavy. Back in my truck, I sat for 10 minutes before opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No greeting. No closing. Just one sentence. You deserved better than me, but I needed you to believe I was worth keeping. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in the glove compartment. She was right. I did deserve better. And now, I was going to make sure everyone knew just how much she took for granted. The letter sat in my glove compartment for 2 days before I touched it again. I didn't know what I was expecting when I first opened it, some explanation, maybe even an apology. But it was just that one line. Cold. Honest. And somehow even more cruel in its simplicity. You deserved better than me, but I needed you to believe I was worth keeping. I read it again, not because I needed to, but because I couldn't help it. The words weren't even angry. That's what made them worse. She knew exactly what she was doing. Every move she made, every lie she told, it was all calculated. And I had played the part she wanted me to play until the end. But the end wasn't hers to write anymore. It was mine. I spent the next 3 days preparing. Quietly. Carefully. The attorney and I put together a full legal package, timelines, notarized documents, digital records, statements from Margaret, testimony from old friends, financial forensics. We weren't just making accusations now. We were building a case. A real one. It started with the bank. We froze every remaining account that still had Diane's name attached. The trust was suspended pending investigation. The cabin in Vermont was flagged. Margaret provided a statement confirming the shell company was created under false pretenses. It was enough for the state to open a preliminary fraud case. Diane didn't know yet. But she would. I also submitted a formal complaint to the church board, attaching the same documents I gave Pastor Green. The board scheduled a hearing. Private, but official. The kind of thing that leaves marks on reputations that never go away. But I still had one more move left. One final strike. It was a Saturday afternoon. Cool, cloudy, the kind of day that made the sky feel lower than it should. The community center was hosting a memorial tribute, one last event in Carol's honor. Slideshow. Tea. Sandwiches with the crusts cut off. I hadn't planned to go. But I went anyway. I wore a clean suit. Same one I wore to her funeral. I brought nothing with me. No papers. No USB drives. No folder. Just my voice. The room was filled with familiar faces. Neighbors. Friends. Women who once looked up to Carol like she was something holy. Some looked my way. Some didn't. I waited until the slideshow ended. Pictures of Carol as a girl, a mother, a grandmother. Laughing. Baking. Holding babies. Then the microphone was offered for final thoughts. I stood up. My legs didn't shake. I wasn't going to speak, I said. But I think I owe you all a few words. The room went still. Carol was my wife for 43 years. Most of you knew her better than I did, at least, I thought you did. You shared recipes. Raised your kids together. Prayed together. I looked around the room, let the silence settle. But the Carol you knew and the Carol I lived with weren't always the same person. A few heads turned. A few jaws tightened. I don't say this out of bitterness. I say this because truth doesn't care if it ruins a nice day. Carol lived 2 lives. And while you were praising her kindness, she was rewriting her legacy behind my back. Someone gasped. I kept going. She had accounts I didn't know about. Properties. A financial partner she kept secret. And Diane? I turned toward the back of the room. Diane knew. She helped. For years. Diane was there. Standing halfway to the door. Her eyes locked on mine, red-rimmed and burning. I stayed quiet long enough. I kept your secrets long enough. But the truth doesn't stay buried. It comes up like roots through the sidewalk, cracking the surface. I turned back to the room. You can believe whatever you want about who she was. You can keep your memories. But don't try to rewrite the facts. Carol lied. And some of you helped her do it, whether you knew it or not. No one clapped. No one spoke. I walked out of the room and didn't look back. By Monday, the church had issued an official statement announcing Diane's removal from all positions. On Tuesday, the local paper printed a brief but pointed article, "A local widow's estate under investigation for fraud." And by Friday, I got a letter from Diane's lawyer. It was short. Cold. She was threatening legal action for defamation. But the thing about defamation is, it only works when you lie. And I hadn't lied about a single thing. I gave the letter to my attorney. He smiled. She's playing defense now. That means we've already won. But I wasn't smiling. Not yet. There was one last thing I needed to do. One last person I needed to face. Carol's sister. I hadn't spoken to Carol's sister, Denise, since the funeral. She'd flown in from Oregon, stayed for a few days, then disappeared back into her life like smoke. That was her way. Carol was the one who kept the family ties strong. At least on the surface. But Denise was smart. And sharp. The kind of woman who never let much slide. And she'd always had a complicated relationship with Carol. They loved each other the way sisters do, loud, messy, and always with a little bit of competition buried under the hugs. I found her number in Carol's old address book. The same blue leather-bound one she'd kept by the landline for 30 years. I called. She answered on the 3rd ring. Denise, it's Richard. Pause. Didn't think I'd hear from you, she said. Her voice was dry, guarded. I need to talk. Face to face. She exhaled. This about the letter Marlene sent me? That told me everything. Word had traveled further than I thought. Yes, I said. That's part of it. She didn't ask for details. Fine, she said. You want the truth? Come get it. 2 days later, I was on her front porch. Rain hit the roof in soft, steady taps. Her house smelled like lemon polish and old paper. She poured coffee for both of us, sat down across from me at a small wooden table covered in a quilted cloth. I knew, she said before I could say a word. Knew what? About Carol. About Diane. About the money. I blinked. She told me in pieces. Over the years. Said it started as a way to feel alive again. Then it became something else. Something she couldn't stop. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. She looked down at her coffee. Because I didn't think she'd go that far. I thought it was just talk. Just escape. You know how people get when they feel stuck. I didn't answer. She looked up at me. I didn't know about the accounts. The trust. The cabin. That part was beyond what I ever expected from her. I nodded slowly. She rewrote everything behind my back. And when she died, she left me holding a life that wasn't even real. She was scared of dying in regret, Denise said quietly. Scared of being remembered as the woman who lived for someone else. She was remembered as someone she wasn't. Denise didn't argue. I pulled out a copy of the final report. A clean, simple version. Just the facts. I slid it across the table. I want you to have it. Not to hurt you. But because you deserve to know the full truth. She read silently. Her fingers didn't tremble. Her face didn't move. When she finished, she folded the pages carefully and set them aside. I wish I could defend her, she said. But I can't. She did this to you. To herself. She chose it. Denise nodded. She did. But I think she still loved you. Even if she didn't know how to show it without lying. That's not love, I said. No. Maybe not. We sat in silence for a long time. When I stood to leave, Denise walked me to the door. Richard, she said before I stepped out. You're not the man she made you out to be. You're stronger than that. I nodded. I know. Driving home, the rain picked up, blurring the road ahead like a fogged-up mirror. But for once, I didn't feel lost in it. I didn't feel like I was chasing something I'd never catch. The fight was over. Diane had moved out of state. The fraud case was ongoing. Margaret had signed her testimony. Carol's legacy, whatever it had been, was shattered, but at least now it was real. Honest. My son called once a week now. Lily brought the grandkids over last weekend. We grilled hot dogs in the backyard and laughed at nothing important. The house felt different. Not better, not worse. Just mine. Sometimes I still sat with the letter in my hand. The one Carol left me. You deserved better than me, but I needed you to believe I was worth keeping. She wasn't. But I kept my word. I stayed. I stood. And when the time came, I didn't fold. I burned every lie she left behind, one truth at a time. The past didn't own me anymore. It was just a story now. One I survived. One I finished.